Hi, my name is Stephen Thane. I serve in the Idaho State Legislature, and welcome to Straight Talk with Thane. What I'm introducing is a 4-part series on Reclaim America. Hope you enjoy it. Reclaim America Part 3 is a comparison between government social programs and the family, which will try to demonstrate that the family is superior to government social programs, and that's why we need to move away from government social programs toward a family-based delivery system. Family-delivered social services, for the purpose of this presentation, include the resources found in churches and civic groups. It's basically private sector. A significant difference between government social services and family-delivered social services is the source of funding. Government funding is extracted from the private sector through the power of the states to tax. Family, churches, and civic groups provide funding through production and voluntary donations. So what we're going to do is go through several characteristics of families and government-delivered social services and see which one is superior. So family-delivered, as far as cost goes, is a zero cost to other taxpayers. It's a very efficient way to deliver social services. Family-delivered social services, as we've said, is self-funding and is voluntary. Whereas government-delivered social services are very expensive. 73% of Idaho's budget goes to government-delivered social services. 58% of the federal budget goes to social services. There's a high program cost, and it's funded through taxes on productive families and businesses. The funding is mandated and not voluntary. So it's a very coercive system. So let's compare now the outcomes, because if the outcomes of government programs are good, then we can justify the expense of them. However, if they are not good, then the reason to have them is seriously undermined. Functional healthy families have low rates of poverty, and most poverty is actually found in single-parent families. There's less crime, less drug usage, lower rates of abuse, and higher income levels, which means healthy functional families pay more taxes. There's greater success in school by those that are raised in healthy families, whereas families dependent upon government entitlements become poorer and poorer with each passing generation. They create a culture and a cycle of poverty. They experience higher and higher levels of crime. They engage in higher levels of drug usage, have higher levels of abuse, and have declining income levels, and have less and less success in school, which is playing out right before our eyes. So let's talk about administrative cost. The family has zero administrative costs for other taxpayers. Government programs, however, have high administrative costs. There's Washington-based administrators based in the state. There's social workers, auditors. Everybody needs secretaries. Everyone needs a salary. They have to have offices in buildings which require heating and cooling. There's travel expenses, and on it goes. Truth of the matter is, poverty programs are big business. So let's talk about flexibility. A family has maximum flexibility to adapt a program for the needs of each person, and they can do it very quickly. They have the option to change on an as-needed basis. Government programs, however, lack flexibility. Government programs are designed in the nation's capital and in state capitals, and it takes a long, drawn-out legislative process to make any changes whatsoever. They are administered according to regulations, not individual need. They treat everyone the same, regardless of individual needs. So how about accountability? Families are directly accountable for the success or failure of the work that they do. They're accountable for how resources are used because they spend their own money. Under family-delivered social services, the individual is also held accountable for his actions, and assistance is terminated if progress is not made. Under federal entitlement programs, Really, no one is accountable for costs, successes, or failures. Not politicians, not social workers, and not the recipient. Actually, more failure is a reason for more funding and an expansion of social services. Funding is based upon how many poor exist, not the number of poor that become productive. So let's talk about the limited nature of these two types of programs. Federal programs are virtually unlimited, have unlimited funding, unlimited length of the program, which results in gross inefficiencies, abuse, and overuse. Family-delivered social services have limited funding, have limited program length. They end at the life of the family at the most. So abuse and costs are limited by the funds of the lack of funds of families and friends. Let's talk about incentives. Federal social programs continue to grow and expand. If more recipients are found, more funding is needed. More funding creates a need for more social workers. More social workers creates job security. There is no incentive to create productive tax-paying citizens out of the current recipients, for this would reduce budgets and the number of social workers needed, which would result in budget cuts and layoffs. But how about families? Their incentives are very different. They use their own funds. They don't want someone to be permanently dependent upon handouts that they are directly funding. So they want to create independent, productive adults. They want to use as few resources as possible, which results in efficiencies and innovative strategies. Let's talk about the political impact. Federal social programs results in power and money migrating to Washington away from families and local government. This strengthens the central government and weakens the family and local government, giving power to politicians to bribe the voters with their own wealth. Family-delivered social programs, on the other hand, leaves funding in family hands, empowers families, and reduces the power of the central government. Voters are empowered, not politicians. Let's talk about resource flow. Federal programs cause resources to flow from the family to the federal government. Family-delivered social services cause resources to stay in the family and deny the state resources and the power derived therefrom. How about decision-making? Federal programs and decision-making is made by bureaucrats. It includes politicians, experts, social workers. In a family-delivered social service system, however, choices and decisions are made by those funding these voluntary services: parents, voters, recipients, charities, churches, and civic groups. So how about empowerment? The federal system empowers the government with money and decisions. They can grant and withhold resources to any person or class they decide. A family system empowers the family and the private sector. The truth is, limited government with a balanced budget is nearly impossible with the system of entitlements now in place. So, if federal entitlements are so negative and have so many negative consequences, why don't we do it? What are the objections? Well, some will argue that individuals and families are incapable of providing the funding necessary to handle social problems in a modern industrial society, and that only government has the resources to fund needed social spending. So let's analyze this thinking a little bit. But first, let me make it very clear, I'm not suggesting an immediate end of the current system. In fact, I have not offered in this presentation any solution, not one. The government does not have any, let's make this clear too. The government does not have any wealth for the very simple reason that it exists. It has to first extract it through taxes from the private sector. So since government does not create wealth, you can't argue that the private sector can't provide it because it's providing the wealth for the government programs. Objection number 2. Really the issue is how can the needy and the poor and the disabled be assisted? I maintain the current system is inefficient and does not address the needs of the poor. It in fact is a system designed to empower politicians and employment for social workers. I maintain the current system needs to be reformed. The needed reform will improve services to the needy and reduce costs to all taxpayers. Who would oppose a system that provides higher quality assistance at less cost? So that's the choice. Family or federal social services. And what are the advantages? Which has lower costs, better outcomes, lower administrative costs, greater flexibility, higher levels of accountability, limits, better set of incentives, more positive political impact, encourage resource flow to the private sector, decision-making done in the private sector, and empowers people rather than government. It's obvious that the family does. So, in Reclaim America Part 4, we'll explain in some detail how we can improve social services by strengthening the family.